Hey guys, this is Blaine from Earhart Racing RC, and today we're going to be taking another look at the Losi foam track. This is part 2, so today we're going to cover a couple of subjects that the previous video didn't cover, such as the jumps, expansion packs, storage, maintenance, the other side of the track, the RC18T, and the Latrax Rally. If you haven't seen part 1, make sure you go check that out as well, because it has a lot of information about this track that you might be interested in knowing. The first thing I wanted to discuss in this video is track maintenance. Now for us, all we've ever done is taken a wet towel and wipe down the track, and this seems to work great. It makes the track look fresh, takes off all the dust, dirt, and debris that the shoes and everything else is brought to the track, and it does seem to make it stick, or at least feel sticky, in comparison to having all that dust and debris on the track. While this method might currently work for us, I think it's pertinent to note that one day we may have to more seriously clean the track. From what I've read online about this particular subject is that mixing tire compounds on the track may cause the track to lose traction over time. Now this could be really bad, but apparently their solution was to steam clean the track, and it seems to take a lot longer, but they were able to gain back their traction. I may do a part 3 covering this particular aspect if it ever becomes an issue for me and my family down the road. A unique feature of this track is that it comes with built-in jumps. The other RCP tracks don't come with these jumps, and I don't think you can buy them as separate components. The jumps are propped up by foam supports. These foam supports have no height adjustment, so if you want more air, you're going to have to make custom supports. And I felt the height was kind of lacking for the cars I was driving on it, because they didn't really get much air, and it didn't add a lot for the fun and craziness of the track. I did make the track more of a challenge by adding a lot of these jumps, but occasionally the vehicles would get high centered, and I didn't much care for that, and I felt like normal jumps wouldn't do that. I feel like custom jumps is a better option, as it allows for more flexibility on the types of cars that you're going to use on this track. There are 3 types of jumps that come with the track. There's the tabletop, the triple, and the double. The tabletop was by far my favorite because it allowed the widest variety of cars to be on it. I felt like this jump was the only jump that could be compatible with all the cars that could be driven with this track. I'd also like to note that the tabletop can be split in half so you can have 2 full-width jumps. The next 2 jumps are pretty much the same. One has 2 jumps in a single square, and the other has 3 jumps in a single square. I really don't like the 3 jumps in a single square. It's just a lot going on for that single tiny little square. Because the ramps are so small, inexperienced drivers end up often flipping their car around this area, and then they have to go fetch their car. I don't feel like jumps should be designed this way. The double is a little bit better, but it still didn't fit all the cars that we ended up driving on this track. The RC18 wheelbase was a little bit wider, and I feel like if you were wanting to drive the RC18 on this track, you could, but maybe just not prop these jumps up. In the end, I actually like my cardboard jumps a lot more than I do like these. They're wider, they're easier to hit, and they make you jump higher, which might end up breaking more parts, but honestly in the end, that's what the jumps are there for, is to have a little bit more fun with the track for more experienced drivers. One of the cooler things about these tracks is that you can buy kits. The kit that you're looking at right now is an expansion kit, which would widen the track by 1/3. I think this kit will make it a lot easier to do the RC18 driving, however, I just don't have the room for it in this garage. They do have a few other kits for this track as well, such as large radius turns, chicanes, and 45-degree turns, which could make for a really fun drive. As I mentioned in the previous video, there are 2 sides to this track. There's a smooth side and a textured side. I would like to note that it was about 50 degrees in my garage at the time of filming this, and that could definitely make a very large difference in how much traction you're going to see when you drive on the track. The textured side seemed to have the most traction, but it wasn't much more than the smooth side depending on the tire type. The tire type did seem to have the largest impact on how much the vehicle would slide around the track. I tried the Latrax Rally on both sides of the track, and I felt like the Latrax Rally did just a little bit better at drifting on the smooth side. I didn't just test to see if this car was driftable, I wanted to see if it was drivable on the track, so I took it slow for a few laps, and I actually discovered that it has a lot of control at slow speeds, and the turning radius is amazing in this car, which makes it a really good pair. If you're going to drive slowly on this track, I think you could get away with driving a few of these on the track for a race. However, you definitely need 2 of these tracks in order to do that. I do feel that if you had an expansion pack, you'd have a lot more fun driving at higher speeds with this car. It does make the car a lot more drifty to drive it at higher speeds, but I think driftiness is part of the fun of driving this car. The 2S LiPo that I was driving with gave the Rally a lot of power. I'd also like to note that the Rally did a really good job of not flipping over, and when it did flip over, it flipped back over onto its wheels, which was really nice for not having to go fetch the car. Even though it was larger and it seemed to hit the sides more often, it didn't flip over like the Micro RCT does when it hits the sides. Now while the Rally isn't really made for jumps, I did decide to take it off the jumps and see how it fared. I felt like the only jump it actually could make it off of was the tabletop. The other 2 jumps were just too low and too narrow for the car to really make use of. The RC18T could also use 2 tracks and the expansion packs. In fact, I'm not positive I want to drive the RC18T on this track without expansion packs. I feel like the turning radius of the RC18 wasn't as good as the Rally. Now that being said, I do think it was still fun to drive, and I think it would be a lot more fun with some custom jumps. Because like the Rally, this vehicle was even wider, and the double and the triple were pretty much no-goes. They basically were just obstacles in the way of this vehicle. You could even drive over them in reverse if you really wanted to. Again, I'm going to mention the tabletop for being the perfect jump for this track because it suited all the vehicles, including this one. This vehicle was the only vehicle that I tested that could just drive over the bumpers, but you could just drive the car right back onto the track and be on your merry way. Really the only time I ended up going to get this particular car is when I flipped it over. Something else to be mentioned about this car is that the wheels weren't made for this track. I think it would have helped a lot if I would have found some new wheels to try with this car on this track. I think it would have made the car a lot more drivable and a lot more fun to deal with on this track, but instead it was very slippery on the track. Even at lower speeds it would slip around because it just had so much power with the 2S LiPo in it. I also tried the Micro RCT on the smooth side. I couldn't tell the difference between the 2 sides in this vehicle when it had a 1S LiPo in it. However, there would probably be a difference if I did put a 2S LiPo in it, maybe some small drifting, but not very much because the wheels for this vehicle are meant for this track. I am considering finding some drift wheels for this vehicle because I think it would be a lot of fun, as its size is perfect for this track already. As I mentioned in my last video, the turning radius for this vehicle isn't very awesome, but it only takes about 10 minutes to fix and you just need an X-Acto knife to do it. I'll make sure to include the link to that below. The jumps on this track were pretty much built for the Micro RCT, and it can do all 3 of them. Novices have the most difficulties with the triples, either end up flipping their car or actually getting stuck on the jump, making you have to go get the car. The last thing that I wanted to talk about was disassembly and storage. Disassembly is basically assembly in reverse, except there's a lot of track to go through. Now if you wanted to disassemble it every time that you played with this track, it's going to take you about an hour, and that doesn't include what it's going to take to put it back together. Now if you're like me, you're not going to disassemble this every time you put it away. In fact, you'll probably hardly ever disassemble this. The only reason I'm disassembling this right now is actually to flip the track over, because you cannot do a mixture of the track. You can't have the soft side mixed with the textured side. So to use the textured side, you have to disassemble the track and reassemble it. And if you want to use the soft side, you have to, again, disassemble it and reassemble the track back together. This process took me about 3 to 4 hours, and I even made a cool high-speed cap remover with a drill and a drywall screw. I also didn't even put the caps back on because I was getting tired and I needed to shoot the rest of this video. The track held up relatively well with just the bumpers on, even in storage. I wouldn't try moving it like this though. When putting all this into storage, you're going to have to put away the stuff for the jumps, so just find a box and throw all the foam supports in there. This shouldn't take you more than a few minutes. To put the track into storage, you're just going to want to tear it apart in chunks. That's the fastest way to put it back together. To do it in chunks, you're just going to want to do it in 4 to 6 pieces of length, and then you're going to want to start at the finish line and go around the track in reverse. This will allow you to put back together the track really quickly just by laying it out from the start line and going around the track like you normally would. It makes a lot of sense to put it away this way. Stack them or lean them up against a wall. Try not to let them fall over if they're leaned up against the wall, because they might bend and retain their shape. This process only takes me about 10 minutes, and maybe 15 minutes to put it back together if I'm keeping the same layout. This foam track has been a great accessory for minis and micros. It's durable and it'll last a long time. Because they're so durable, a lot of these end up in the used market, so make sure you check around there before you buy. Depending on where you live, a track like this might cost you around $600 if you bought it new. If you have minis and micros, I highly recommend you check one of these tracks out for yourself. Thanks for watching RCP Racing RC. Subscribe, because next week we'll be doing a review on the Mini Q on this very same track.